Hi, my name is Barbie Enrico, and I'm here to welcome you to Pitch Tips Zoomcast, and where venture capitalist Fred Haney gives feedback to CEOs of startup companies to help them raise capital. Fred is an experienced venture capital fund manager, angel investor, entrepreneur, founder Monday Club, and author of The Fundable Startup, one of the best selling books about startup companies getting funded. So let's find out what Fred has to say to today's CEO.
Hi, welcome to the Pitch Tips Zoomcast. I'm Fred Haney, your host, and we're here today to help a budding startup company improve its chances of getting funded. In a minute, I'll introduce you to Alex Seguin of AI ML Technology Solutions. And our purpose is to do a quick review of Alex's pitch presentation and see if we can find some ways to help him improve his chances of getting funded. My background is that I've worked with hundreds of startups as a venture capitalist and angel investor, and I've been the co-founder of 6 companies myself. And I've tried to pull all that experience together in a book called The Fundable Startup. Some of those ideas will leak out as we proceed here. You should imagine yourself as a fly on the wall in a venture capitalist's office as an entrepreneur, that'll be Alex today, makes his presentation to a venture capitalist, that'll be me today, and see what you can learn about how you might improve your pitch as well. The whole idea is to help improve everybody's chances of getting funded. Alex, why don't you give us a quick elevator speech about your company and tell us a little about your background and how you got involved in the project.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for the invite, Fred. So my company is focused on preparing today's students for the future world of artificial intelligence. And actually started because we noticed a gap in education, and very few high schoolers had actually got exposed to real-world AI applications. So what we noticed is there's a hands-on experience gap. Students must enroll in 6 years of college today and spend more than $90,000 of tuition. And we wanted to address that gap with an ecosystem that easily allows them to generate their own first AI experience with machine learning models that are simple, but also through AI projects that are tied to real world problems, such as self-driving cars. So that's in a nutshell, our company, but at the end of the day, we're trying to improve and prepare students for the future world of AI.
How'd you get involved here, Alex? What brought you to this project?
Yeah, so my background is actually in multiple imaging technologies. So thermal imaging, we also worked on acoustic images at a company called Fluke up in Seattle, Washington area. But my experience is on imaging, and I've noticed that AI, with computer vision specifically, was ramping very fast in the world. And few big companies had the resources to tackle kind of computer vision AI applications for their larger companies of more than $100 million of revenue. So when working at a company called Clear, I had some ideas around working and incorporating thermal imaging and AI while taking some classes. Really, I just see this underserved area to provide simple hands-on training, but also computer computation is getting way, way better today with GPUs and other affordable computing power.
Great. Well, that's a good background. Thank you. Just by way of context here, I want to explain a little bit about how venture capitalists think about companies. One of the things I learned very early on in my venture capital experience was that the days just weren't long enough for me to get excited about every wonderful company I saw. When you're in the venture capital business, you see hundreds of deals every month sometimes, and they're really interesting, exciting ideas. So it'd be real easy to get all wrapped up and chasing some of these ideas and getting real involved. And what you learn very quickly is that you end up saying no to a lot of things. And if you're going to say no, you better say no fast in order to manage your time. Otherwise, you spend all your time just getting excited. So the way venture capitalists approach that is that when they look at a project, they say, well, if this is going to fail, it's a negative thought process. I'm sorry about that. But if this is going to fail, why would it fail? What are the big risks here? And so I make a list of risks, and now you go through those risks and you say, well, can I get comfortable with that one? Or do we see a way to fix it? Or maybe there's some things we can do to mitigate it. And if we can go through our list and get comfortable that we can live with all those risks, then maybe there's a deal. So it's important to understand this. It's not that venture capitalists are negative particularly, it's a time management issue they have. And they tend to come at, let's triage the most important issues here. So with that, Alex, why don't you go ahead and give us a little more of your pitch deck. We'll do a 3 to 5 minute version of your pitch deck. And then when you're done with that, I'll come back with some questions and suggestions.
Perfect. Let me start sharing my screen. And let's see here. All right, let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, you're good. I got it.
All right. All right, I'll go ahead and begin. So at AI ML Technology Solutions, we're preparing today's students and workforce for the future world of artificial intelligence. My name is Alex Seguin, CEO, co-founder, and we noticed a gap in educational training to prepare high schoolers specifically to learn about real-world AI applications. Today, students must spend 6 years of college and more than $90,000 tuition here in the United States to get hands-on AI experience. So we have a problem because there are limited AI educational programs in high school to adequately prepare students for one of the fastest growing job markets. Our solution is the eXeL AI platform that provides an all-in-one and patent-pending ecosystem that not only simplifies the machine learning model workflow, but provides multiple AI projects that are linked to real-world applications, such as self-driving cars. In this next slide, I'm going to go into demos because it's just easier to see our prototypes that are out there today. And what you'll see is our eXeL AI kit allows for simple interaction for machine learning model development. And we use these models today to help our self-driving car navigate around these blocks, but also to detect objects and follow those in the field, just like this camera system. And we're integrating computer vision into robotic arm applications in the future. And that's what I mean with the eXeL AI platform. It's really a whole bunch of offerings that utilize computer vision, AI, and existing projects. With experiences as global business manager, strategy and growth manager, as well as R&D portfolio management, I've been fortunate to launch more than 15 products in many high margin businesses. My CTO, co-founder, Bart William-Beck, has launched 60 products in various technologies, such as servers to industrial imaging. And our machine learning engineer has developed models for breast cancer detection, outperforming standards by more than 3 years. Currently, our total available market is 120 schools, or 1,000 schools, and our SAM is made up of high schools only. We're targeting just 3% of that in 5 years, or 2,000 school systems by 2026. And our eXeL AI customers are largely STEM educators, but also technology decision makers who require simple, affordable, and robust AI tools to help their students gain a career in the field of AI. Our business model captures value through hardware and software subscription models by serving both B2B partners as well as B2C end customers. With a target of 2,000 schools per year and a $10,000 price point, serving and selling multiple systems, we're building to $60 million of cumulative revenue in a 5-year period. And what's more interesting is our company just formed in October 2020, and we launched the MVP in less than 3 months, and we have provisional patents as well as our self-driving car prototype underway. Currently, our revenues are $30,000 in 2021, so we made revenue in less than 6 months of operating. As you'll see in this financial funding scenarios chart, with $1 million of funding, we see ourselves growing to $20 million of sales revenue with a 5-year NPV of $20 million. With lower funding levels, we'll likely hit $2 to $8 million of revenue in year 5, with NPVs between $3 to $9 million. Thanks again, Fred, and everyone on the call, as we look to find the right investors to help in gathering people interested to support our AI mission, which is to prepare students for the workforce for the future world of artificial intelligence. Thanks again. All right.
Okay, you can take the screen share off. Good job, Alex. Thanks. It's a nice, crisp presentation. Let's dig in on a couple things.
Sure.
You said at the beginning that, I don't remember if you called it a gap or a limited number of opportunities for students to learn AI. How do you measure that? I mean, who's lying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning wishing that there were more ways to teach these kids? I mean, from your point of view, there may not be enough, but who says there's not enough? How do you establish that?
Yeah, so what we know right now is computer vision robotics applications growing at 75% a year. And that's by a whole bunch of market reports, including eXeL, which focuses on computer vision applications. But we also talked to multiple high schoolers and high schools. And what we noticed is there's an idea here that robotics is already in place. But when you talk about AI and machine learning or computer vision, the applications for robotics integration are pretty limited. And I'll give an example of a New York-based school that wants us to come in for a summer-based program. And they're probably the #1 STEAM program in the area of New York City. And they've just not seen any AI applications, but they want to tie robotics and AI together. And so the job market right now is only 10,000 AI engineers out there. But what's interesting is there's a need for AI offerings and just being part of that ecosystem, including just jobs in the market. And so that's where we're basing everything off of. But it's really talking to a lot of superintendents, buddies of mine who've been through various business analytics programs, mainly Harvard, but also we know where the market's going, and we know that AI may displace some jobs. So how do we get more exposure earlier than college, right?
So define schools here. Are we talking about colleges? We talk about high school? What grade levels are you attacking?
We're tackling specifically high school because college right now, they have bachelor's and master's programs that are super technical, mainly computer engineering and AI engineering. But the school systems, the current methodology aren't simple enough for someone with little technology experience to partake, right?
And to what extent do high schools care about preparing students for specific jobs? I mean, my guess is that there's kind of a spectrum, but are some high schools more interested in sort of occupational training than others?
Yeah. So a lot of the teachers out there want to actually prepare the students for real job applications. You know, they're limited in knowledge around engineering. Those who have STEAM or STEM programs or robotics programs are the ones that are a little more apt to actually partake in this AI field. I would say that's 15 to 20% just rough off the cuff calculation that are actually targeting, you know, technology industries. And so those schools are prepared and they're trying to do their best to prepare schools for careers in the technology field. There are other schools, and you know, you'll have 1 or 2 teachers at each school that might be technology enthusiasts who want to do more. They just have limited budgets.
And then does that play into how you target your marketing?
Yeah, so we're focused on, you know, the people who have those technology programs in place today. So they're largely in wealthier areas. And yeah, so we're really focused on the first adopters, what we're calling trailblazers in the technology space, with the hopes of once we get some profit and a roll into, you know, those areas, we can provide applications for the underserved market software.
So we'll come back to that a little bit. I wanted to talk some more about your marketing focus and marketing strategy. But let's go back for a minute to the problem you're solving. Your description of the solution kind of focused on the technology. What's the perspective of the student? I mean, you know, I think when you showed me the technology and said, here's how we're solving the problem, I think I might rather have seen a student getting the problem solved somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, I mean, in a funny way, I mean, I know it's not the student who's going to make the purchasing decision, but the student's really your customer. I mean, if the students don't
Correct.
embrace the technology, then you don't really have a marketplace. So talk about the student. What's the student's perspective here? What does the student see, and why is this better for the student than other approaches?
Yeah, and so the number one request actually from everyone we talk to out of our Lighthouse customers is, you know, can you do stuff like autonomous inspection or self-driving? So self-driving Tesla comes up a lot. So yeah, we basically say something like, yeah, we can access the skill set and the technologies to help you learn a little bit about how self-driving cars work, right? And so students are really just interested in kits that enable them to get access to technology, but do cool stuff. So what we'd like to do is, for instance, an R2D2 type robotic solution. And we've had overwhelmingly positive responses to develop something like a R2D2 like kit that can expand over time and gets better at doing certain things, and putting students in the kind of driver's seat of where that takes off. You know, the self-driving car is just an educational kit, but when you do something bigger that can potentially you know, outperform many industrial type products that are $20,000 or more, they get really excited.
So when you show me that the technology solution, I think I'd like to see, I don't know if it's instead of or in addition to, I'd like to see a student solving a problem.
Oh, for sure.
You know, and getting excited about it. I mean,
Yeah.
more personal. I mean, the technology is impersonal, fine, wonderful. You can do artificial intelligence, but show me somebody. How does the student solve the problem, and how does he get excited? I mean, that might be a 20-second video all by itself, right there.
Right.
Because that's really your marketplace.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I appreciate that comment. It's actually we're working with our Kentucky-based Lighthouse customer who has 20 kits purchased, and getting those video feedback loops as well. So testimonials for them. They definitely see the value, but I think you're exactly right. You know, showing engaged users working with the product and potentially coming up with additional solutions that we solve together. There's definitely excitement in that space, especially with the self-driving.
Yeah. So jump to another point. Your team slide. You talked about a couple of your team members, yourself and at least one of the others, have launched a lot of products. That's great. I think I would zoom in on that a little bit and explain more how that's relevant to this project, or maybe take one or two successes out of that and build them up. You know, it's one thing to say, I launched 100 products. It's another thing to say I took this product from zero up to $100 million in sales over an 18-month period of time, and I did it by doing this. I mean, you're not trying to snow investors with big numbers. You're trying to show them that you really know how to do this.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
and that's actually in our 5-minute pitch deck. But the one example, Bart and I actually worked together at Fluke, but he and I launched a first to world acoustic imager, $20,000 price point, and we hit $20 million in the first year.
See, I would say that. I think that's an important, and I understand I'm so used to people saying, well, I only had 3 minutes. I got it. but it is, I mean, I would probably include that in I would put that in instead of we launched 150 products.
Perfect.
Or maybe you could say 150 under your breath, but the success you had with that one probably speaks more than the 150.
For sure. And yeah, I mean, just speaking further, I mean, we basically launched hardware and software products together with cloud architecture and AI already. So like that product specifically cancels out noise, does all this other stuff, but basically first to world product, kind of cool exposure to get this new product out. And not many people have worked on something that large, right?
Right. So here's another point that registered for me. When you talk about initially 3% market share, you should know that investors don't like 3% market shares. And there's a better way to say that, and I think it probably should drive the way you think about your marketing, market strategy, market definition, market entry. The problem with 3% market shares is that it means you've probably got 33 competitors. And usually when people say 3%, you know, they've got a great big market opportunity and they say, well, we only need a little bit to be successful. But you're probably not really going after that whole opportunity. That big opportunity probably doesn't really define the market that you're targeting. See, what investors know is that successful companies usually have market share in excess of 20 or 25%.
Right.
So what you need to do is show me the market that you're going to dominate. And usually that's just a matter of narrowing the definition of the market you're going after. So I would be careful about that. You know, you
Okay.
talked about, I mean, I think if you take the spectrum of high schools out there and say, well, you know, which ones care about this kind of thing and really narrow that down, it's probably a much narrower market than the big number you're using. So I would much rather, it's okay to say, it's a small market at the beginning. I mean, you could say we're the only guys. You know, the whole market, maybe $5 million in year one. There's one other company somewhere doing this or something like that. That's okay. And we're going to create the market. We're going to grow with the market. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you say all we need is 3% of this huge market, that scares a lot of investors.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, I think that's definitely a good point. The end of the day, I think we narrowed down STEM educational school systems in high school, and then we also say we're the first entrant to provide AI hands-on curriculum for this application. Right? Like there's not that done in high school right now. So.
The concept of it's a marketing concept of served available market. Is a really useful concept. I mean, you ought to spend a little time understanding that. It really says define the market that you really, truly, in fact, intend to serve. That's your market. That's what you want to have a piece of. Not just everybody out there, you know, all the high schools or even everybody who's doing AI, perhaps. I mean, you really need to narrow it down to exactly the kinds of things you're doing. Perfect. And then one other comment, you mentioned your patent. When you talk about a patent, it's always important to say at least a sentence about what it really protects. I mean, what does the patent keep a competitor from doing?
Yep. So yeah, for us, it's kind of the UI and how we go about bundling and detecting using multiple camera systems in our offering for education. So one camera, anyone can do that, but we have multiple machine learning models and multi-camera systems that are protected by the patent. So that when we have that offering, it's a little harder for someone else to replicate without, you know.
Okay, it's important. I mean, that's what investors really want to know. I mean, patents are really tricky. I mean, some of them are very, very broad and protective. Some are very narrow and fairly easy to work around. So you need to say something to investors to help them understand the protective power of your patent. Right. Investors are looking for unfair competitive advantage. And a patent is often an important part of that.
For sure.
Yeah. Alex, do you have a specific question for me? Is there an issue I might be able to help with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a really fan, so I read your book as well. But when you think about disruptive technologies, do you see this as, or where do you see us potentially using the AI high school kind of early entry opportunities to make and establish a beachhead that's defensible, but also just disruptive, because we see ourselves growing beyond just education one day with our focus really on that so we can build for the future. But what are your thoughts?
I could come at it from different ways, I guess. I mean, and if I think of it as an evolution in education and the way we teach things and stuff like that, I don't know if it's disruptive or evolutionary, somewhere in between. The disruptive part potentially could be the way you do it, I guess. I mean, if that really takes off and you really do have proprietary aspect, that's great. I'm aware of at least one other company that's doing a very similar thing. And my guess is there's a handful of them out there. So that might, pull the disruptive rug out from under you a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
But I do think it's a good idea, and I think it has a lot of potential. What a venture capital investor would want to know is there opportunity to really scale this up? I mean, the $60 million number is probably okay, but it's not unicorn territory for most of the VCs. So if you wanted to make that kind of an argument, you'd probably have to create more of a growth future. I mean, it might be out 3 or 4 years, but you might want to have a forecast that says, look, once we get our sea legs here, we can really scale this up into an enormous international business. That could make it disruptive.
For sure.
As it sits, I wouldn't call it disruptive. I'd call it attractive. I mean, I think there's an opportunity there. Might be more for angel investors at this stage than for venture capital firms.
Yeah, and we look for the opportunity where once we have some of these robotic integrations and our AI kind of brain attached to multiple solutions, the capability gets better and smarter over time. So hopefully we'll reach a point where people realize, oh, that's a really good deal versus what's out there at a way higher price point. So the key thing for us is starting small, but the capabilities as we evolve, just like Tesla updates their self-driving cars, for us to be able to update our systems to add more functionality, full of capability, that would be our end goal, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, Alex, thanks. I think it's an interesting idea. I think you've got a lot of potential there. To summarize a little bit, I would probably shift the balance a little bit more toward the student. You talked in the beginning about a limited number of opportunities, but I'd like to hear something about students who are lying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning wishing they could learn more about artificial intelligence. So part of it is the student as the customer, and part of it is the student as the user. Again, we talked a little about making maybe a short, even 10, 20, 30-second video of a student participating here. Because as it stands, if I just step back and say, now, what am I getting? Am I getting technology or am I getting customer needs? I'm getting a lot of technology and not as much customer need as I might like to get. And then I would really work on defining that market. That's not just a semantic thing. I mean, that gets down to, where do I tell my salesman to go call? Who's our target customer here? I mean, I assume you're having to sell this to the schools, not to the students. But you really need, I think, a very targeted definition, again, of that served available market. That's an important concept. And I would play up your own background a little more, talk more about your management experience. The question that investors are asking is not how many products have you launched or what positions have you had. The question is, how do I know that you're the right person or the right team to manage this project to success? So you want to talk about your management experience and your management successes in the past, and not just yours, but the rest of the team too, because that's what it's going to take to instill confidence in investors.
No, it makes sense. Appreciate it, Fred.
Hope that helps. Well, Alex, good job. I hope that helps you improve your chances of getting funded. It's a good project. I think you've got good enthusiasm for it. You'll find a way to make something work. And listeners, we hope that this program helps you improve your chances of getting your project funded. That's really what it's all about. Please, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And pay attention. We're always adding content, some of it in the form of these pitch tips Zoomcast programs, and some of it in the form of recorded Money Club programs where companies do a 35-minute Q&A with an audience anywhere between 10 and 30 people. So those can be informative too. There's also a lot of content on the YouTube channel that might help you in different ways and address some of the specific problems you have. Okay, thank you for doing that. I hope it's helpful to you.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, any feedback. I mean, yours has been by far probably the most valuable feedback we've had, just to fine tune the messaging. So we appreciate the time to just provide that for us. Everyone else just has been providing little one-offs here and there, but not kind of a holistic storytelling approach. So I appreciate it.
So again, Alex, thanks very much for participating, and listeners, come back next time.
Thanks, everyone.